Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking everything crankbait. This is the beginner's guide to crankbait fishing. We're going to be talking about setup. We're going to be talking about how to fish the crankbait. And we're going to be talking about my favorite crankbaits for beginners. Let's get into it. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. So the crankbait is amazing. I have caught my biggest largemouth and my biggest smallmouth on crankbaits. I've had 20 fish days using the crankbait. So the crankbait is a great bait to use for any angler. Do not be worried. I'm going to talk about my setup here. But if you're a beginner and all you have is a medium power spinning rod, like I've talked about time and time again, you can still fish this. Okay. I've had 20, 15 fish days with just crankbaits on a regular medium power spinning rod setup. So you can still fish it. So don't be worried about that, but I'm gonna tell you my setup for fishing a crankbait. So the first thing I use my bait caster for crankbaiting. I use my moderate powered 7-foot Defy Black 13 fishing rod. I love this rod. It works really well, great casting distance. I paired that with an Origin R1 from 13 Fishing, 6:1 gear ratio. Bait casting reel. Just got myself. Bait casting reel. Now I use 12-pound fluorocarbon line when fishing my crankbait. Straight 12-pound fluoro on this reel. And like I said, don't worry about, like, if you don't have this, like, it's okay, you can still fish it. Get you a medium powered spinning rod, you can still fish this crankbait. I love to fish this crankbait. I cast it out there like a jerkbait almost. When I cast it out there, I might give it a good couple reels to get it down to where I want it to be. We're going to be talking about the length, right, and depth of the crankbait when we talk about the lures, but the depth is really important. You want it to be right where the fish are. So sometimes, depending on the terrain that you're fishing, you want to get that bait all the way down to the bottom, right off of those rocks, bouncing off of rocks, right, deflecting off of rocks, and really making that fish notice that bait bouncing off those rocks. There's other times, like the other day I was fishing and there are a lot of weeds where I was, so I had the crankbait to a depth where it was just above the weeds or just cutting through the weeds slightly, and I was able to kind of rip it out. And those reactions, those things where it's bouncing off a rock or striking and really coming out of weeds really fast, those are the things that trigger the bass to bite. So like I mentioned, I might fish it just casting out there and just straight retrieve, getting it down there, a couple reels, getting it down there, and just nice slow steady retrieve. Something that also works is a couple burns and a pause, right? So you might burn, pause, burn, pause, right? Changing your tempo, and on those pauses is when the bass are going to bite. So you can fish this a lot of different ways. Like I said, get it down to a depth, steady retrieve, burn, pause, right? So depending on where you're fishing and depending on the time of year will kind of dictate how you retrieve this crankbait. So some favorite crankbaits of mine that I've used. This one right here, I caught my PB on, my 6-pound PB the other day. This is a Rapala DT6. Okay, I forget what color this is. I'll link it somewhere down here. I'll show it down here what the color is. I like the Rapala series because you can literally find it anywhere. Right? If you go to Dick's Sporting Goods, Rapala's everywhere. If you go to Walmart, you'll find a bunch of Rapala baits there. So the Rapala line is really accessible for beginner fishers. There's also what you call square bills. This is a square bill right here. This is a 13 fishing scamp. I have an old guacamole color. I also have like a gold shiner color that I like to use. These I really like for smallmouth. The square bills really should go from 1 to 3 feet in depth. So if you're fishing really shallow, you want to use a square bill. Like I said, I caught my PB smallmouth on this specific color a few years ago. I was loving my life. So I've always kept a 13 fishing scamp in my tackle box since then. This is also the Rapala DT10, right? So they come in 1 to 3 depth. And usually when you're fishing and when you're trying to buy a crankbait, it's hard to remember what goes to what depth. So most crankbaits nowadays have the depth that it goes to somewhere on the bill or on the body of that lure, right? So you never have to really try to remember how far does this go. If you can see the depth, whether you have a fish finder, whether you have just your sight, you can kind of see where the weeds are. They usually have the depth on them that you can remember and kind of know what to fish with. Tactical Bassing came out with one for winter fishing. There's a difference between winter fishing, summer fishing. The colder the water is, the tighter the wobble is, right? So the tighter the wobble of the crankbait you want it to be, right? So those Rapalas have a really tight wobble that I really enjoy. the 13 fishing scamps have a really wide wobble, right? So you want to use that during the summertime. And actually during the summertime when I caught that PB smallmouth, now that I think about it, I was on point. Those are some of the lures that I really like to use. If this video was helpful to you, subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna keep dropping how-to guides for beginners. How to fish a shaky head, how to fish a Ned rig, how to fish a drop shot. If you're a beginner and you haven't learned how to fish a drop shot yet, I have a video on how to fish a drop shot. It is probably one of the greatest baits. You can use it all year round. I'll link that video here in the card. Thank you for watching the channel. I'll see you in the next video.